This Torah class is brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.
Okay, welcome everyone. B'siyata d'shmaya be'ezus Hashem. We begin the book of Exodus, Sefer Shemos. And the first pasuk in Shemos, Ve'ele Shemos b'nei Yisrael. And these are the names of the children of Israel. Haboyim Mitzrayma, coming to Egypt. Eis Yaakov ish uveisai ba'u. And there's a famous remez of the Baal HaTurim. The Baal HaTurim is referring to the mitzvah of being ma'aver sedra, the mitzvah of reciting the pasuk 2 times and the targum once. Now it's interesting. If you look carefully at the language of the psukim, of the sources, if you look in the Gemara, for instance, the Gemara is quoted in number 9. What exactly is the level of obligation of being Ma'aver Sedra? The lashon of the Gemara is La'olam Yashlim Adam Parsha Yosef. La'olam, always. Really, La'olam, always a person should. Is that a chiyuv? It sounds like you should do it, but... And if you look in the Torah says it a little bit more strongly. The Torah says tzarech, you need to. Actually, the Torah is also on your sheet in number 12. If you look in the Shulchan Aruch already, in the Shulchan Aruch it says chayev. So you see very slight nuance of language, but what the Gemara calls la'olam and what the Torah calls tzarech, the Shulchan Aruch codifies as chayev, you're obligated to. And that's the conclusion. This is something that we're obligated to do. In fact, if Moshe has a tshuva, let's say somebody who spends his whole day learning. So he's learning Gemara, he's learning Shas and Poskim. He should take time off to read the psukim, Bereshis Bar, like Yemei. He has that in his back pocket. Rabbi Moshe says, no, there are no heteya, there are no excuses. Nobody's exempt. By the way, it's not true nobody. Let's say Gentiles are exempt from being Ma'aver Sedra. They're not chayiv to. It's not one of the Shemos b'nei Noach. So it's not so strict. Only Jews are chayiv, and that's what the Baal HaTurim makes reference to this. Baal HaTurim says the words ve'ela shemois b'nei Yisrael are a rashi tevos. Ve'adam asher lo yimeid haseder, a person who learns the Parsha. That's ve'ela. Shemois shnayim mikra v'yachad targum. B'nei b'koil na'im yashir, in a sweet voice, referencing the fact that it's ideal to read it with the trop. Yichya shanim rabois aruchim la'olam, will live many long years forever. So the Baal HaTurim says the remez to being Ma'aver Sedra is alluded to in this pasuk. Ve'ela shemois b'nei Yisrael adam asher lo yimeid haseder shnayim mikra v'yachad targum b'kol noim yasher yichya shanim rabois aruchim la'olam. He'll live a long life. I remember Rabbi Olbam said over that his father's Rabbi in Hungary was somebody named Rav Shaul Brach, famous Rosh Yeshiva, and Rav Shaul Brach, who was Marbitz Torah something like 40, 50 years, said that the reason why he lived long, the reason why he had Arichas Yamim, he did not attribute it to what? He did not... It seems to be one catchy. Noam, plays a pleasant voice. Yeah. You're saying if you don't have a good voice? We'll deal with it, So, the Reb Shaul Brach said the reason he was Zachat Arichas Yamim is he was always makbid to be Ma'aver Sedra. He could have attributed, he was a tremendous Marbitz Torah. Nevertheless, this is specific haftacha of Chazal, that someone who's Ma'aver Sedra will be Marich Yamav. Okay, now let's talk about this remez for a moment, because the Baal HaTurim has many ramazim. The Baal HaTurim keseder on every pasuk. The Baal HaTurim has gematrios and rashi tevos. But what I want to point out first is that this is such a legitimate remez that the poskim quote this remez as the makar of being Ma'aver Sedra. So, for example, the Levush, when he in Siman Reish Pehei, why Siman Reish Pehei? By the way, the Rabbi Yaakov Emden writes the Simanim of Shulchan Aruch are significant. There's a certain Ruach HaKodesh to them. So we once said that Ma'aver Sedra is in Siman Reish Pehei Rafeh because it's something that's Rafeh B'Yodenu, something that we're not nizhar in properly. But the Levush writes that a person is obligated to Ma'aver Sedra. V'simanich, the Levush says, ve'ele shemois b'nei Yisrael, v'chayiv adam likrois haparsha shnayim mikra v'yechad targum. And who's chayiv? B'nei Yisrael. And anyone who does this will be marich yamav u'shnaisav. Okay, very nice. Now this remez V'chayiv Adam Likrois HaParsha, Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum, is such a authentic remez that the poskim are medayek in the Rashi Tevos. Comes the Eliyah Rabbah, and the Eliyah Rabbah says, Ve'ela Shemos V'chayiv Adam Likrois HaParsha, Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum. Says the Eliyah Rabbah, why Shnayim? Why not Shtayim? Why Shnayim is Lashon Zachar? Why not Shtayim Mikra V'echad Targum? Is a raya, there's a machloikis ha-poiskim, how one should be maver sedra. There are two opinions brought in the Mishnah Berurah. There's a third opinion brought in the Aruch HaShulchan. Mishnah Berurah says some poiskim say pasuk, pasuk, targum, pasuk, pasuk, targum, pasuk, pasuk, targum. Others say no. Parsha, meaning when I say parsha, pei and samach. You read until the first pei, you read again to the pei, and then all the targum. Pei, targum. So there are two ways of doing it. Pasuk or parsha. Pasuk is Lashon Zachar. The parsha is Lashon Nekeva. The fact that the remes to Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum is what? Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum. Shnayim is Lashon Zachar. Why do the Bali remes say Shnayim? It must be because they're siding with the opinion that the correct way to be Maver Sedra is Pasuk, Pasuk, Targum, and not Parsha, Parsha, Targum. So I would have said, so maybe it is Shtayim. Where does it say Shnayim? All it says is a shin. It says Shemos, shin, member. So maybe Takat Shtayim. No. The fact that the Balaturim calls it Shnayim Mikra, from there we could derive a halacha that, at least according to some poskim, the more correct way of doing it is a way that most people don't do it. I think most people, they do it neither way, which the Mishnah Berurah mentions, and that is they just read the whole Parsha and the whole Parsha and then Targum. That's how most people do it. 90% of people do it that way. Yeah, my the official Gallup polls that I've taken. But you know what it's like? It's like the assignments you used to get in yeshiva. Not saying that I used to get, but people who used to get. So you'd have to write 100 times, I will not. So what do? You make one line down and you go, da-da-da-da, I, right? So same thing with Maver said. You can go, pasuk, tari. It's much quicker to go through the whole thing. Anyway, I'm taking the new generation. I don't know, Okay. So that's what the Eliyah Rabbah brings down. So we see from here that the remes of Maver Sedra in this week's Parsha, in the first pasuk, is not just a nice vart, but it's already brought in the poskim, and the poskim consider it so authentic that we could be medayik in the gender of the words, shnayim or shtayim, exactly the more correct way to be Maver Sedra. What is the original source of this remez? Like, what's the earliest source of the remez of Shemos standing for Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum? So the Chida brings, we know that when the Chida traveled through Europe, he went to all the libraries, he memorized whatever manuscripts he could get a hold of, and the Chida quotes in the Sefer Chomas Anach in number 5, that on the words Ve'ela Shemos, Rabbeinu Ephraim, now Rabbeinu Ephraim was one of the Chachmei Ashkenaz, one of the German Rishonim. Rabbeinu Ephraim already brings the remez, Chayiv Adam Likrois HaParsha, Shnayim Mikra V'echad Targum. But Lichten Cup, I remember that I once saw a Rabbeinu Ephraim that gives a much longer remez. That he has a remez for every letter in the pasuk of Ve'ela Shemos B'nei Yisrael Abba Mitzrayim Eis Yaakov Ishu Beis Bo, that he's merames to, that this whole pasuk is referring to the mitzvah being Maver Sedra. So I looked at Rabbeinu Ephraim. It's not there. I looked on Otzar HaChachma. I looked in HebrewBooks.org. But I remembered I once saw an edition of Rabbeinu Ephraim that he gives a remez, Rosh Tevos, for every single letter of this pasuk. So I called up all the bookstores in the neighborhood. They didn't have a Rabbeinu Ephraim. They're getting it in now, but I can't wait. I need the Shiurs Wednesday night. So I went to Yeshiva Gedolah, 5 towns. They didn't have it. So I went to Darchei. Yes. And I parked all the way on the other side, and I couldn't go in through the back, and I walked all the way. And luckily they had Rabbeinu Ephraim, and sure enough, in the last comment of Rabbeinu Ephraim, in one of the editions, Rabbeinu Ephraim gives a Rosh Tevos that this entire pasuk is referring to the mitzvah of being Maver Sedra. What does Rabbeinu Ephraim say? Check this out. Ve'ela Shemos B'nei Yisrael Habaim Mitzrayma Eis Yaakov Ishu Veisai Ba'u V'chayiv Ata, not Adam. Yeah, that's very important, A person, Avada, a person's Chayiv Maver Sedra, but not me, I'm Potter. I have my life. If the Baal Turim would know what my life is like, he would obviously exempt me. No. It's a much better remez. V'chayv ata, you're chayiv. Likrois ha-parsha. Shnayim mikveh ha-targum. Okay? Now, b'nei, betame neguna yukrena. Read it with the trop. Yisrael, yismach simcha rabba im lamda. If you do it, you should rejoice. Haboim, ha'oisek betalmud eino yarei me'a'inshim. If you do it, you don't have to worry about punishment. Mitzrayma, mikol tsaros rabbos yutzalu mishnine ha-Torah. You learn this, you'll be saved from many tsaras. Or, it alludes to a halacha, that malamdei tinoikos are pater from being ma'aver sedra. Why are malamdei tinoikos being pater from ma'aver sedra? Because during the course of the week, they end up, vayidaber Hashem and Hashem, so vayidaber Hashem. They end up being ma'aver sedra enough times in 1 week for the rest of their life, And basically, Rabbeinu Ephraim goes on to say that this entire pasuk is a reference to the mitzvah of being ma'aver sedra. So this is pretty serious business. That if we were to isolate, we're in the Chumash, leka mida d'loi ramiza ba'iraisa. Everything is alluded to in the Chumash. We're in the Chumash is the mitzvah being ma'aver sedra. There is no question that the main remez to the mitzvah being ma'aver sedra is the first pasuk in this week's Parsha. Now, I don't know about you, but if I was writing this document, and I wanted to be meramis to the mitzvah being ma'aver sedra, I would have done it in the beginning of Bereshis. When the mitzvah starts, I would have started the Torah, ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael, or figure out a way to get the mitzvah of ma'aver sedra in the beginning of the Chumash. Because between me and you, if you haven't done Sefer Bereshis, I don't think there are too many people who are going to hear the shiur tonight and say, you know what? I'm so inspired to be ma'aver sedra, I'm going to this week be ma'aver the entire Sefer Bereshis, Shnai Mikveh Chadarim, and continue with Shemos. I think most people, they'll hear the shiur and they say, you know what, I really should do it, and that's why next year I'm going to do it, when Simchas Torah comes. But I doubt anybody is going to be so inspired. Look, if you feel the shiur are really that drastically altering your life, please tell me, it'll make me feel really good. But as good as I think the shiur will be, but I don't think anyone's staying up all night being ma'aver the entire Bereshis. So why in the world is the remez to ma'aver sedra in the first pasuk in Sefer Shemos? And this is a question of none other than the Chidah in the Sefer Chomas Anach. And the Chidah gives a Kabbalistic answer based on an idea that there's something called klipas noiga, which is some kind of shell, which is a klipa of tumah. And I'll leave it to you to try to figure out what he's talking about and what it means. But it's beyond the scope of this shiur and my ability to articulate what the Chidah's answer is. But that's what we're going to discuss tonight, this question. Why is the mitzvah of ma'aver sedra alluded to in Sefer Shemos wrong place? I mean, it's really the worst place to put it. If you had to think, where is the worst place to put a remez to ma'aver sedra? At least Vayikra already, you're a little bit closer to the end. I mean, the worst place you're going to put it is Shemos. You're ready. It's basically just when you're at the point where you can't start anymore. So what's it doing over here? So we're going to give three answers. One is halachic, one is lamdish, and one is al pi machshava. The first answer is like this. There is a gadol in Eretz Yisrael by the name of Reb Gamliel HaKohen Rabinovich, not to be confused with Reb Gamliel Rabinovich. Okay, the one that everybody knows is Reb Gamliel Rabinovich. We have all his svarim. Tiv HaParsha, Tiv Hischaskos, Kavanas HaRashash, Kavanas HaRiza. He's also a Kohen. So not to be confused with Reb Gamliel HaKohen Rabinovich. Okay. He's a Mekubal in Yeshiva Shar Shemayim. This Reb Gamliel is a mechaber of svarim called Gam Ani Oidcha. And in the back of it, he has Shailas to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. And he asked Reb Chaim Kanievsky the following question. Let's say you have a guy who wakes up, let's say, Shemos time. And says, you know what? It's been a tough winter. I really didn't get started. I haven't been ma'aver sedra. But I know the inyan of being ma'aver sedra is to complete the Torah with the tzibur. But there is no way, I don't have the time, and I certainly don't have the patience to go back and do the entire Sefer Bereshis. It's like daf yomi. You fall behind one day, okay, you can make up one blot. You fall behind 2 blot, maybe. You fall behind 4 blot, I'll see you in 7.5 years, or maybe by the next Masechta. So, what if a guy is up to Sefer Shemos, and the guy's honest, there is no way I'm making up Sefer Bereshis. Is there an inyan to start Shemos, or do we say, start Shemos? Imagine a guy who in the middle of Shemona Esrei realizes, I forgot Yalav Yavai. And now he's up to Maidim. He says, are you kidding me? To go back and say the Shemona Esrei? There's not a chance in the world that I am going back and saying Shemona Esrei. If you want, I'll finish from Maidim to the end. So we tell the guy, don't do us any favors. It's worthless just to say Maidim to the end if you forgot Yalav Yavai. So maybe if a person was not Maver Sedra, Sefer Bereshis, there is no point in being Maver Sedra, Shemais till the end. After all, the inyan is to finish the Sefer Torah, and you didn't do that. So that was the question posed to Reb Chaim Kanievsky. And Reb Chaim answered, Kedarkei b'kodesh, is there an inyan? He gave a 2-word answer. Yesh inyan. Yes, there is an inyan. Reb Chaim said Yesh inyan. So now, Reb Gamliel Akon Rabinovich has a Torah on the answer of Chaim. You know, there are so many svarim now with Shas and Shuvas to Reb Chaim. Reb Chaim gives like a 1 or 2 word answer, and then all kinds of beiurim of what Reb Chaim meant. So says Reb Gamliel, now we understand why the remez to be Maver Sedra is in Sefer Shemos. To teach this halacha, that even if you blew Sefer Bereshis, it's never too late to start. Don't think, you can't start now because you already missed Bereshis. No, if you start now, it's also good. It's also at least you're Mekayim Sefer Shemos. That's why the remez is in Sefer Shemos. Very nice. But that's why the remez is in Sefer Shemos. So just want to remind everyone the 3 convenient ways that your phone doesn't go off. Either you could remove the battery, turn it off, or cancel service. Those are 3 convenient ways that the phone does not disturb. Okay, so that's the first pshat. The first pshat is that the reason why the remez to Maver Sedra in the beginning of Shemos is to teach you this thing. You could always jump on the bandwagon even if you got started late. Okay, that's answer number 1. Answer number 2. Answer number 2 is a Lamdisha answer. It comes from the Sefer Nefesh Yonasan, not to be confused with the Nefesh Yonasan of Rabbi Yonasan Eibeshitz. Look in the Lashon of the Gemara. Take a look at number 9. Amar Rav Huna Bar Yehuda Amar Rav Yami La'olam Yashlim Adam Parshiyosav Imatzibur. A person should always complete his Parshas with the Tzibur. Shnayim Mikra V'yachad Targum V'afilu Atarois V'divain Shekol HaMashlim Parshiyosav Imatzibur Marichin La'yama V'shnaisav. Anybody who finishes the Parsha with the Tzibur, he'll live long. What example does the Gemara give of finishing the Parsha with the Tzibur? You should finish the Parsha with the Tzibur. Even what? Even the cities of Ataris and Divine. Even the names of the cities Me'ever LaYarden, Ataris and Divine. Like, why does the Gemara give that example? Why doesn't the Gemara give Afilu Alufei Esav, Afilu Achois Loitan Timna, Uvnei Dan Chushim? Why Ataris v'Divine? So Rashi says, Ataris v'Divine, Ein Boi Targum. There's no Targum on Ataris v'Divine. There's no Targum on the words Ataris v'Divine. And even so, you should read it 3 times. Now, according to Rashi, what would you say about the words Reuven, Shemain, Levi, Vihuda? There's no Targum on that either, right? So would you have to read that 3 times? Yes. If Rashi is learning that the reason why it picked Ataris v'Divain is because those words have no Targum, that would then teach me that any words that have no Targum, there's still a mitzvah to read it 3 times. The Torah, however, if you take a look at number 12, the Torah says not so fast. The Torah brings a machlokes Rishonim. The Torah brings an opinion on the Rishonim that the reason why it picks Ataris v'Divain is because even though there's no Targum Onkelos, there's Targum Yerushalmi on the words Ataris v'Divain. The reason why you have to be Maver Sedra Ataris v'Divain is there's no Targum Onkelos, so read the Targum Yerushalmi. But Ruvain and Shemain, where not only is there no Targum Onkelos, because the Targum Onkelos is Ruvain and Shemain, the Targum Yerushalmi is also Ruvain and Shemain. According to this opinion, you taka be pater for being Maver Sedra. But according to Rashi would say you're chayiv, because Rashi just says that the reason it picked Ataris v'Divain is because there's no Targum on it. So anything that doesn't have a Targum, you have to do 3 times. Other Rishonim said it picked Ataris v'Divain because at the very least it has Targum Yerushalmi. But something that doesn't even have Targum Yerushalmi, like Ruvain and Shemain, you'd be pater. Says the Sefer Nefesh Yonasan, look where the remez to be Maver Sedra is. Ve'ela Shemos b'nei Yisrael b'Mitzrayim ha'is Yaakov v'shu b'eisai bo'u Reuven Shimon Levi v'Yehuda. The remes being Maver Sedra is by the 4 words that the least reason to be Maver Sedra exists. The words Reuven, Shimon, Levi, Yehuda, where there's no Targum Unklis and there's no Targum Yerushalmi. So the reason why Chazal are merames to the mitzvah Maver Sedra there is to teach that you should be machmir, like the Torah says, that even words that have not only no Targum Unklis, but no even Targum Yerushalmi, you should still be Maver Sedra. That's why the Indian of Maver Sedra is by the 4 words that have no Targum at all. What? No, so Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov. There's no pasuk Avram, Yitzchak, and Yaakov, right? There's Avram, Halach. So there's no other pasuk that just has names that has not only no Targum Unklis but no Targum Yisham. This entire pasuk is just names. So are there other psukim just names? Usually you would say Ubenei or Vateled. This is the first pasuk in the Chumash that has no Targum whatsoever. So that's why the remes to Maver Sedra is by a pasuk that has. There's no explanation, no elucidation whatsoever. What is it? There is a Targum Yerushalmi. What is it? I don't know offhand. You'll look it up. There is a commentary where they give different words than the words Ataras V'Divine. I don't know what it is offhand. Okay. Rabbi said these are the first 2 answers. Answer number 1 is like a Musar Vart. You know, if you fell behind, start now in Shemos. The second one is a halachic Vart, that even if the word has no Targum at all, you read it 3 times. The third approach is a very interesting approach. It's something that I came across last year, and based on it, I had a very interesting idea. And the miracle was that I actually remembered that I put it in my file cabinet, and I was able to come back to it. That was the Ness. Okay, so here it goes. And I'll be honest with you. In this approach, it's an astounding approach. It's a fascinating approach. There are some missing pieces, and I'll admit to that. But the idea is something which is very remarkable. Okay, let's take a look at the Haggadah Shel Pesach. Okay, so don't say Pesach time, I didn't give you Divrei Torah. We're starting early this year. What are we now? It's Chodesh Teves, Shvat, Adar. What? 3 months? 3 months. 3 months is Pesach, okay? So start cleaning, start doing whatever you got to do. We're starting to prepare for the Haggadah right now. We all know the Haggadah begins, Ha, Lachma, Anya. And it's not rocket science. You look at the language, it was obviously written in Targum, in Aramaic. And all the Mefarshim want to know why in the world it was written in Aramaic. The rest of the Haggadah was written in Lashon HaKodesh. This is the question of all the Mefarshim we have on the sheet. The Abarbanel, in his commentary Zevach Pesach, he wants to know why is Halach Ma'anya written in Aramaic. And the Abarbanel gives the following answer. You see, when Klal Yisrael were in Eretz Yisrael, so it was obvious. If they were poor people, if they were Aniyim, the Aniyim would come to the homes, and the Yidden would help be Mefarnes Aniyim. But in Bavel, where the doors are locked, and the Aniyim are outside, so how are we going to get the Aniyim to get inside? How are we going to invite them indoors? So we make this declaration, Kol Dichven Yeseh V'Yechal. The problem is, you're speaking to Aniyim. You're not speaking to, Go'inei Olam. They were not that familiar with Lashon HaKodesh. So therefore, the Abarbanel says they were masakein the opening of the Haggadah, Halach Ma'anya, in Aramaic, so that the Aniyim could understand it. There is one question on the Abarbanel, though, and that is, the entire Halach Ma'anya is not in Aramaic. There is one word written in Lashon HaKodesh. Which word is written in Lashon HaKodesh in Halach Ma'anya? The word chayren. Because in Aramaic, you would say chari. B'nei Chari. Why is the last word in Hebrew? So you say, once the Aniyim hear Kol Dichven Yeseh V'Yechal, they don't need to hear anything else. Then we could go back to Lashon HaKodesh. No, but why is Chayrin in Lashon HaKodesh? Okay. Rabbi said today we're going to learn about Aramaic. The truth is, the Marsha, Masechta Megillah, says Aramaic is really more familiar to us than Lashon HaKodesh. And that is because before we spoke Lashon HaKodesh, we were in Aram Naharayim, and we learned who is our Zayda. We grew up on our Zayda's lap. Lavan, Zayda Lavan. I know you took it off your Shidduch resume. I know on your resume it doesn't say the Elta Zayda was Lavan, but that's the reality. Your Elta Zayda was Lavan. he spoke to you in Aramaic. The first language we knew before Lashon HaKodesh was Aramaic. But it's interesting, in the Haggadah we point out, Seyu lamad ma bikesh lavan ha'arami la'asos Yaakov Avinu. We emphasize the fact that who is this guy? He's an Arami. My nafkamina, he's an Arami, or he's North Korean, or wherever he's from. Why do I need to know he's Lavan ha'arami? What's that got to do with anything? So you say, well, that's what the pasuk says in Kisavai. We say, Arami oived avi. The Aramean tried to destroy my father. Who does that refer to? Lavan. So why does the Torah call him an Arami? It should say, Lavan oived avi. Why Arami? So yeah, last week we spoke about Lavan bikesh lakas hakol. Obviously, ein beis hamedrash b'li chidush. What's Arami oived avi? Fine. If you look at number 18 and 19, there seems to be a very interesting dialogue between Rachel and Yaakov Avinu. Rachel was pregnant with her last child, who was going to be Binyamin, and she was having a very difficult labor and delivery. Vayhi b'tzeis nafsha, as her soul is departing, kimesa. Vatikra shemai ben oini, va'aviv karalai Binyamin. She called him the son of my pain, and his father called him Binyamin. What is the difference between Ben Oini and Binyamin? There is no difference, says the Medrash. It means the exact same thing. Ben Oini is Aramaic. Binyamin is Lashon HaKodesh. Interesting. Says the Medrash, Bar Tsari b'Lashon Arami, va'ariv karlai Binyamin b'Lashon HaKodesh. Okay, interesting. The brothers come down to Yosef, and they're talking. You know, why are you holding on to Shimon? Why are you holding on to Binyamin? Let us go. Vayigash elav Yehuda. No. Vayomer Yosef ani Yosef. Ha'oid avichai. And what's the first thing Yosef says to his brothers? Look at me. Look at number 20. V'hinei nechem royos. Your eyes see. Ve'enei achi Binyamin. Ki pi hamedaber aleichem. It's my mouth speaking to you. Says Rashi, what was Yosef saying? My mouth speaking to you. B'lashon HaKodesh. Look at me, I'm speaking in Lashon HaKodesh. Yeah, and who cares? What's the guy to do the price of tea in China? Why is Yosef pointing out, look at me, I'm speaking in Lashon HaKodesh? I think they understood that, you know. They knew that. Why is he pointing that out? So I'm going to share with you a chidush. This chidush is found in basically two places. It's a very interesting idea. It is unknown what the source of this idea is. And the idea goes as follows. It's found in the two of the earliest Sifrei Drush. Sefer number 1 is Chanukas HaTorah. Chanukas HaTorah is from the Rebbe Reb Heschel. The Rebbe Reb Heschel was the Rav in Krakow. The Rav in Krakow in the time of already the Megala Amukos. He was the times of the Taz, the times of the Bach, an early Mefarish. And this is also found in the Sefer Lev Aryeh. Lev Aryeh is also one of the earliest of the Darshanim. Okay, so it goes like this. Says the Chanukas HaTorah. If you want to know why we went down to Mitzrayim, I'm sure you all want to know, right? Why did we go? What did we do wrong? Whose fault was it? It was the fault of Yaakov Avinu. Really? I never heard that. That's right. And what did Yaakov Avinu do wrong? He injected Targum into the Torah. Where did he inject Targum into the Torah? When Lavan said, Eid Hagal Hazeh, let this mound be a witness, Lavan called it Yegar Sahadusa, the mound of testimony. V'Yaakov Karaloi Galed, and Yaakov called it Galed. And because Yaakov put Targum in the Torah, we had to go down to Mitzrayim. It corrupted the Torah. Why Mitzrayim? Doesn't explain. It could be because in Mitzrayim, even though I don't think most people ever heard this, they spoke Aramaic. If you do research on the history of Aramaic, there were many Egyptian dialects of Aramaic, and certainly the origins of Aramaic are tied to Egypt. Although he doesn't explain exactly why they had to go down to Egypt. So again, here's the basic principle. The principle is, you know something about this? The principle is, the reason we went down to Mitzrayim is because Yaakov injected Targum into the Torah. So you could ask, about what are you talking about? Yaakov didn't inject Targum into the Torah. Lavan did. Lavan said, Yigarso Hadusa. Yaakov said, Galed. So, in the past, when I've said this over, the only way I had to explain this was that when Lavan said the words, Yigarso Hadusa, Yaakov should have said, keep your mouth closed. Do not use Aramaic. Shver, zip it. That's in other words, Yaakov is faulted, maybe in a nicer way. But Yaakov is faulted for allowing Lavan to use the words Yigarso Hadusa. I think at the end of the show we're going to say a different explanation. I'm just telling you the words. If you take a look in number 22, the Chanukah Satorah says, black and white, Bishvil shehevi Yaakov Avinu lashon targum b'Torah, Lavan kara Yigarsa Hadusa, Yaakov kara Galed. Therefore, Klal Yisrael went down to Mitzrayim. Marver Aboisai in Parshas Vayishev, as they're about to sell Yosef. What does the pasuk say? Look at number 24. Vayisu eineim, vayiru v'nei orchas yishmelim ba mi Gilad. Where in the world's Gilad? There's no place Gilad. What do you mean they're coming from Gilad? Gilad is a remez that you know why they're going down to Mitzrayim? Because Yaakov said Galed. The Rebbe Reb Heschel. He says that. I don't make anything up. The Rebbe Reb Heschel said the remez that they went down to Mitzrayim because Yaakov said Galed is because when they were about to sell Yosef, V'nei orchas yishmelim ba mi Gilad. Gilad is Yosef is Galed. This is what it means. Arami oived avi. Arami, through Aramaic, oived avi. My father almost destroyed us. The avi is not Lavan, the avi is Yaakov. Arami, because of Lashon Aramis, oived avi, my father tried to destroy us. Not Lavan, Yaakov. Says the Rebbe Reb Heschel, that's what it means. Vayered Mitzrayma, onos al pi hadibur. We were forced because of the words that were spoken. Okay, so if this was somebody, this century, you say, okay, it's a nice interpretation. This is, going back 400 years. This is the Leiva Aryeh, this is the Rebbe Reb Heschel, that the reason we went down to Mitzrayim is because Yaakov used Aramaic. What do you want from Yaakov? Yaakov didn't use Aramaic. He said Galed. I don't know, he let Lavan use Aramaic, or in one language, in one version, it's because Yaakov spoke to Lavan in Aramaic, Lavan spoke back to him in Aramaic, so Yaakov shouldn't have spoken to Lavan in Aramaic in the first place. But
Yaakov translated it?
What?
Isn't the issue Yaakov translated it?
But he translated into Hebrew.
Because it's Tirgum.
So right, but he put it into Hebrew, right, which is better.
How did they speak all the years that they were together?
So Yaakov should have said, look, you want me as a son-in-law? You speak my language, you speak my sprach. I don't talk your Aramaic business.
When translating it, he validated Lavan.
He validated Lavan. Okay, I have an idea that, but right now I'm just reading to you the words. The Leiv Ha'aryeh takes us even further, and the Leiv Ha'aryeh says, that's why when Yaakov saw that Rachel was giving birth, and Rachel said, Ben-Oni, Yaakov said, no, I'm not going to make that mistake again. Binyamin, don't say Ben-Oni, I'm not doing that again. And therefore Yosef says to the brothers, look, do you know why we got into this mess? We got into this mess because Tata spoke in Aramaic. Look at my mouth, I'm going to get you out of this mess. I'm going to speak in Lashon HaKodesh. I'm going to speak in Lashon HaKodesh. That's why the Rebbeinu Shalom tells Lavan, Al tedaber im Yaakov mitoivad ra. Don't say anything good, don't say anything bad. Why doesn't Hashem want Lavan to speak to Yaakov? He says, enough. You already stuffed enough Targum into the Torah. Don't open your mouth. Don't say a good thing to Yaakov Avinu. Don't say a bad thing to Yaakov Avinu. So that is the revelation, so to speak, of the Rebbe Reb Heschel, the Sefer Leiv Ha'aryeh. We went down to Mitzrayim because Yaakov Avinu used Aramaic. Again, we don't understand. He didn't use it. Lavan used it. Yaakov used Hebrew. He used Aramaic. We had to rectify that in Mitzrayim. That's why Yosef says, Ki pi hamedaber aleichem. That's why the pasuk says, V'nei orchas yishmelim ba mi Gilad, a lashon of Galed. That's why Rachel, when she said Ben-Oni, Yaakov said, no, Binyamin. Enough with the Targum. So I found last year in a Haggadah, interesting Haggadah. The name of the Haggadah is Haggadas Eliyahu of Rabbi Eliyahu HaKohen mi Vilna, HaKohen mi Izmir. Eliyahu HaKohen mi Izmir is the Baal Shevet Musar. He wrote Medrash Talpios. He says, why do you think the Haggadah begins in Aramaic? Halach ma'anya. You know why? Because the night of the Seder, we need to recount all of the various causes of what started the ball rolling, why we ended up in Mitzrayim. Why do we end up in Mitzrayim? Arami oived avi. It's because of Aramaic. So where are we going to enunciate this idea? We're number 26. Where are we going to enunciate this idea that would cause us to go down to Mitzrayim is Arami oived avi? So the Baal Haggadah was mechaber. By the way, who's the Baal Haggadah? We don't know. Reb Simcha Bunami Parshas says Eliyahu Hanavi. So no, Eliyahu Hanavi, but usually the author signs his name in the beginning. That's right. Hanavi Eliyahu. That's what Reb Simcha Bunam says. But anyway, Eliyahu Hanavi was mechaber the halach ma'anya in Aramaic to teach that the reason we went down to Mitzrayim is because Aramaic got put into the Torah. Okay, very interesting. Aramaic got put. So, and how are we going to rectify that? Like, how are we going to? So let's think for a moment. We went down to Mitzrayim because Yaakov inappropriately used Aramaic. Okay, so now what? Usually, if you make a mistake, you live with it until you could correct it. So how in the world are we going to get out of it? So I happened to find, randomly, in a Chasam Sofer in Chulin, on Daf Chav Chesed Beis, in the middle of nowhere, Chasam Sofer says a davar out of this world. Says a Chasam Sofer, you know why there's a mitzvah being Maver Sedra? You read the pasuk twice, you read the Targum once, and you're mevatel the Targum b'roiv, and you get rid of the Targum. He doesn't say why you need to get rid of the Targum. He doesn't say why would you be mevatel the Targum? Targum is giving me Sinai. Look, I'll show you. In the middle of nowhere, Chasam Sofer says in Chulin, Daf number 29. Mikamakim legamri lo nisalka. The klipa is still there. L'chein tzarich l'sakna levatla chad betrei b'shnayim mikra ki aklipa nisalka gamri. That by being maver sedra, you're abolishing the targum. You're nullifying the targum. You're being mavato the targum like a piece of treif meat. Right? If you have a piece of treif meat, what do? So the thing is, you're in mavatla nisal chachila. But if you have a piece of pig that falls into two hamburgers, and they look exactly the same. How that's possible, I'm not sure. You have three hamburgers. One is McDonald's, and two is kosher delight olav Hashem, right? So you have two kosher delight and one McDonald's, and they got mixed in. What do you do with the three hamburgers? You eat them, eskazin to hate. In fact, the Bnei Yissaschar says it's a mitzvah to eat it. It's an inyan to eat it. We should mark it skula. It's a skula, he says. Can you imagine? We're the newest skula. The newest skula is, now, in mevatlan l'charchila, you can't, if you throw the McDonald's burger in, you can't eat it. So we'll have to have cameras set up where we can verify. We have a mashkiach who could verify that it's slipped in, and then we can mark it. Anyway, Sam Sofer says that's the inyan of Targum. You're mevatel the Targum chad betray. According to the Sam Sofer, it comes out hafla v'fela. Now we understand why the remes v'maver sedra is in the beginning of Parsha Shemos. Because Sefer Shemos is a book of Galus. And why are we going into Galus? Why do we need to go into Mitzrayim? What are we doing here? The answer is halach ma'anya, because of Aramaic. And we know the Rebbeinu Shalom always prepares the refuah before the makkah. Rebbeinu Shalom always prepares the way out before the makkah. So in the very beginning of Sefer Shemos, the book of Galus, the book of descent into the Klipa, Rebbeinu Shalom says, don't worry, I'm handing you the keys how to get out of the mess that you got into in the first place. And how is that? The Chayiv Adam Likrois HaParsha Shnayim Mikra V'Yachad Targum. So you take the Targum, which is the cause of us going down to Mitzrayim, and you're mavatel it in the tray mikra, and that's how you get out. And then I realized this has to be. This is the only mitzvah in Shas. It's like marichin yamav u'shnoisav. What else is there that's marichin yamav u'shnoisav? Kibbut avim mitzvah zaman yarichin yamecha yamim l'manitav l'achar l'mabah. But yamav u'shnoisav, which, by the way, means not only you have long years, but you have some people, they do more in one day than someone else does in a year, because they maximize their days. So it's Yamav U'Shnos. Why is it such a bracha to be Maver Sedra? The answer is because the source of all troubles is Galus. Why are we in Galus? Because we got out of Mitzrayim early. But if you could figure out a way how to free yourself from Mitzrayim, you have life made. How do you free yourself from Mitzrayim? The first pasuk in Shemos. By the way, Hashem says, you're going down to Mitzrayim and you're doing servitude, you're doing bondage. Why? Because Yaakov put the Targum in the Torah. But there's an easy way out. The easy way out is, V'chayev Adam likros haParsha, shnayim mikveh echad. And if you do that, you're going to live a long, happy life. You don't have to deal with Galus to begin with. What? Okay, it could be that's the Targum, It could be that's the Targum. But maybe. Okay. Oh, Gewaldic. Okay, very good. So what's wrong with Targum? Again, there seems to be some type of Kabbalistic idea that there's some kind of klipas noiga with Targum. But Yossi's asking, at the end of the day, we know, the Gemara says in Megillah on Daf Gimel, that Targum Onkelos was Nimsara Misinai. Onkelos didn't invent Targum Onkelos. Onkelos was given on Sinai. It was taught through Rabbi Elazar, Rabbi Yeshua, and it was reminded through Onkelos. So what exactly is so bad about Targum? That's one very strong question on this whole approach. Right? The whole approach is predicated on the fact that there's something like wrong with the Targum, something poisonous about the Targum. We got to go down to the Mitzrayim to be mavatal it. What's wrong with the Targum? It's Nimsar Sinai. Another kasha he asks, really? Targum is so terrible? You ever try learning Sefer Ezra? What language is it written in? The whole book is written in Targum. Well, let's say for Daniel, a good chunk of it is in Targum. What's Pshat? There's a Rashbam. The Rashbam says they were holding on to the coriander seeds. They didn't know what it was. They said manhu. Says Rashbam, what in the world does the word mun mean? There's no word mun. Hey man. Yeah, we had it, when there's Jamaican in the Torah, What's when the baby was born, we had somebody she's going, hey man, say, Rabbi to you, But, so the Rashbam says, the word should be ma, but in Egyptian you say, how do you say ma? You say man. So they put in the Egyptian word. Oh, so now we should go down to Golos again, because they put in the Egyptian word. Taitafais. And Bechlal, Yaakov put Aramaic in the Torah. He didn't. Lavan put it in the Torah. Yaakov translated it. So at about 8:17, I had the following idea. I was just going to present this to you as is and let you think about it. I had the following idea. You'll tell me what you think. Yaakov didn't put Targum in the Torah. Lavan put Targum in the Torah. There's nothing wrong if there's a word of Targum in the Torah. You see, first there's a Sefer Madani Chaim. He says, Avada Targum is Kadosh and is Nimsar Misinai. But it can't be in the Torah Shabachsav. It can't be in the written word. But then he asks, what about Sefer Ezra and Sefer Daniel? Maybe what the Rebbe Reb Heschel means, and maybe what the Leva Aryeh means, is that there's nothing wrong with Targum per se, as long as it's understood that the mother language is Lashon HaKodesh, and everything else is a branch and facilitates our understanding of Lashon HaKodesh. So long as people understand the original source of language, that the world was created by Lashon HaKodesh, Vayikroloi Isha Kime Ish Lukachazois, that's fine, you could translate it however you want. Moshe Rabbeinu translated the Torah into 70 languages. But once you're going to make it that another language is superior to the Torah, that's a problem. That's undermining the value of Lashon HaKodesh. When Lavan came along and called it Yegarsa Hadusa, and Yaakov translated it, it's Yegarsa Hadusa. By the way, for all those who don't understand what Yegarsa Hadusa means, let me explain. It means Galed. But now Targum is so chashuv that it needs a translation into Lashon HaKodesh. Yaakov should say, Loi Anuka. We don't call it Yegarsa. We call it Galed. It sounds like Yaakov is translating Lashon HaKodesh. He's translating Aramaic into language. So he's like putting Lashon HaKodesh as a shifcha to Targum as opposed to it being the other way around. And maybe the way that by being Maver Sedra, we sort of overcome that is we demonstrate that no, Targum is very valuable, and Targum is kadosh, but it's a Targum of the Mikra. We'll do the Mikra twice. The main thing is the Mikra. Everyone needs to be familiar with the words of the Mikra Lashon HaKodesh. Now, as for further elucidation and explanation, we're going to explain it into the Targum. Maybe that is what the Rebbe Reb Heschel means, even though that's not what he says literally, but maybe we could offer that suggestion. Otherwise, I can't give you all the answers all the time. I'll let you think about it. This is the approach of the Rebbe Reb Heschel, that we went down to Mitzrayim. Somehow, Targum was injected into the Torah. What's the problem with that? How we overcome that with being Maver Sedra? I don't think we have all the answers, but I think this would explain why the mitzvah is alluded to in the very beginning of Sefer Shemos. Because somehow by being Maver Sedra, you're being Mavatal the Targum, which was the main reason that we went down to Mitzrayim in the first place. Arami Oived Avi, that's why the Haggadah begins with Aramaic. And food for thought, the Haggadah also ends with Aramaic. So why it ends with Aramaic, that I'll let you think about. So the Shevet Musar says like this. If it would all be Aramaic, you might have thought like the Abarbanel, that it's because it was written in Bavel. No. It wants to alert you to the fact that, look, there is a Hebrew word here. So try to pay attention to that. Why is the rest of it Aramaic? It's so that we remember that that's why we went down to Mitzrayim in the first place.
Isn't there more than one? Anyway, there's a whole bunch of them in there. Lashanto is not Lashon Haba.
No, it's all Aramaic.
Israel.
Lashon Haba, you're right. But in Aramaic, you would say that Lashon Haba is Lashon Haba. The only word that there's a more Aramaic way to say it is Chayren. So Rabbi said we have three approaches. Number one, that Shem Mikveh Targum is alluded to in Shemos. You could start in Shemos if you haven't started until now. Number two, you should read even the psukim of Ruvain, Shimon, and Levi 3 times. And number three, the reason why it's here is to teach you how we get out of Mitzrayim. And if we're zoichet to Mekayim the mitzvah properly, then Marichin Lai Yamav Ushnoisav B'Toiv Uveneimos. I want to wish all the sponsors a Groisi Ashikayach and all the Nesham Shav and Aliyah.
You've just experienced another Torah class brought to you by TorahAnytime.com.